Hello everyone, Pineaaronapple here with the Code Geass movie, Code Geass Lelouch of the Resurrection. Or if you want to be rude about it, Code Geass Fukkatsu no Lelouch, if that's how you say it. This movie takes place after the main story of Code Geass, but there are a significant amount of circumstances that change here, meaning we can't just jump into it from the original series. This movie is the product of another timeline, where the base story is very similar, but has enough changes that you might get confused without context. This timeline was a result of the 3 recap movies that preceded this film, that did their best to consolidate both seasons into an easier form to digest. This seems to have been done both to serve as a recap, but also for the Code Geass team to change what they were unsatisfied with in the original run. Most changes I greatly appreciated, even if some things that were good were removed too. Before we get into the details of those movies, let's finish talking about today's focus. Much like the rest of Code Geass, this movie was made by Studio Sunrise, premiering in early 2019, and is apparently the precursor to a new Code Geass series that, once it starts, is planned out over a 10-year duration, or at least that's what they originally stated. Following this particular timeline that, for me, is good to hear. Another thing to say quickly before we start is probably that you might find that this script is a lot different to my other reviews, because this was written a while ago and I just kind of forgot about it. And then I saw the news about the new Code Geass video game, where Lelouch has a harem of men and women and somehow had children with the man. But I figured that maybe, since apparently these new anime projects that we haven't heard any news of, apart from what I just stated earlier, are coming out soon, we should finish this movie and the remaining specials sometime soon. Now let's give a quick rundown of the 3 recap movies. Code Geass Lelouch of the Rebellion 1 Initiation, 2 Transgression, and 3 Glorification. Within these are many changes, with both good and bad results. The most major being the removal of the Mao arc. Shirley's father never dies, meaning she doesn't get manipulated by Mao, so she never arrives at the Bay fight with Valletta, and never ends up dying. Some holes are solved, such as D-Tard attacking Valletta, so she ends up with Augie as planned, but the detriment here is the lack of the Mao arc. If you'd only been watching the movies, I feel like due to both its removal and the shortened time span, C2 loses a fair amount of her good character development, and that really built up a lot just by her being there with Lelouch. Although the biggest change with C2 is her entire demeanour by the end of the original story run. In Season 2, C2 seems to be content, but in this timeline she is unable to move on, leading to her actions here. There are also many small additions to flesh out minor details, such as more interactions from Lelouch's childhood, and Rollo and Valletta discussing their roles thoroughly, instead of leaving Lelouch to figure it out, as they may have been a little too long to fit in the film. Basically, a streamlined and cherry-picked speedrun of the 2 seasons. Now, with that background out of the way, let's get into today's movie in question, starting with the characters. Lelouch starts the film in a sort of half-comatose state. A very intriguing addition, as C2 is forced to step into a more supportive role as a result. Something that may have happened in the last 2 seasons, but it gives off a different feeling with their bond here, contrasted with their bond before. That twist not only allows for good progression in C2's character, but also in those who believed him dead. Once regaining his consciousness, it's great to see him actually rely on people, as he not only asks for help, but gets along with those who both fought against him and who betrayed him. His character is as entertaining as before, but his relations and conversations are far more satisfying than in the original show, now that all our main players are on the same team, more or less. His reunion with Nunnally was also great. His resolution by the end of the story with her and C2 were a far better and more satisfying end, for not only the characters, but this chapter of the series as a whole. In this film, C2 is better than I thought she was in the original show. Here she is far more relatable and given a consistent and interesting character progression. Her path in the movie is basically her mission to retrieve Lelouch's psyche, both from C's world and in the form of Nunnally. By the end, they are basically a couple, paying off both the audience investment in both characters and getting a happier ending than the series. Her being far less distant and apathetic on the surface also gives the audience and the other characters an easier time in enjoying her presence, rather than having her kept as a mystery in most of Season 1, or the point of confusion and core progression in Season 2. Here, Carlin comes back into the fold after being pursued by the villains, and meeting up with C2 and Lelouch. Strangely, her whole subplot about being in love with Lelouch is put to the background in favour of having him pair up with C2, which ends up giving her less of a focus than she had in the series. Don't get me wrong, her character is far easier to watch and get along with now that all the main characters are basically aligned on the same side, meaning that their disagreements don't feel asinine. But this fact causes her to have less screen time than others, which is an unfortunate side effect, having her character feel more entertaining, seemingly equating to lessening her screen time. At least in an important and focused sense. Let's see. Well, I have to say that Kururugi seems to commit 100% less war crimes than the original series, and is 50% more moral as well. Only that much due to beating the shit out of a newly uncrippled Lelouch. Here he is the new Zero, who is captured as the film opens. What a great start to his career. Eventually he is rescued and joins Lelouch against Zilkstan. So here I can say he is far more bearable here than before. A plus for me. But I still think he's a bit of an asshole. He gets some good piloting in the nightmares and one nice bit of dialogue with Cullen, but he's still not my cup of tea. The first of our main antagonists is an original character for the film, Shamna, Queen and Priestess of Zilkstan. As an antagonist, she works far better than her brother, and unlike Charles, who was built up over a season and a half, she works well in an almost 2-hour-long movie, where the investment only need be kept for a far shorter time than the show. She is smart, has an interesting Geass, and has an army at her disposal. This sets her up as a force to be reckoned with, especially considering Lelouch's condition. Our other primary antagonist is Shamna's brother Shalio, King of Zilkstan, who is adept at piloting his nightmare frame and strategy. This is shown to be even more impressive considering he is disabled, both regulated to a wheelchair of sorts and blurred vision. These two seem to be a dark reflection of our main brother-sister duo. And just like with Lelouch and Nunnally, the youngest is far more annoying of the two. Unlike Shamna, I didn't really take to this character. To be fair, he is more impressive on the battlefield than both his sister and his wheelchaired counterpart Nunnally, but I found his personality lacking. It was engaging to see him overcome and beaten, considering how strong he is shown as, but that feeling could have been accentuated if he weren't so unlikable to watch, and not being very endearing. So, Nunnally's character changes functions to damsel in distress in Season 1, to a partial antagonist and emotional crux in Season 2, and here goes back to being a damsel in distress. Fuck's sake. And since she is only properly rescued with around 15 minutes left in the film, including credits, she doesn't have much character to make a difference here anyway. So, I don't have as much to say here as with the rest. I'll just say that she was a wasted character melted down to a simple function. Now being the ex-Prime Minister of Japan, Ogi is free to rejoin the fray. And he's fine. It's nice that we don't have to deal with his wishy-washy allegiances, jumping from I love her to I hate her to I love her to I'm teaming up with her and oh god his character arc was annoying. Here he gets some redemption in the form of sort of making up with Lelouch and completing his and Violetta's character arc by settling down with a child. Lloyd Asplund, or affectionately titled the Earl of Pudding, was an interesting character to watch in the original series. He was never a focus, but had interesting connections to Millie and the lesbian table girl, Nina. His allegiance seemed to be the state of Britannia, not to any one person, as the funding he got from Britannia, both when Charles or Lelouch were in power, was what kept his research afloat. But his interactions with his co-workers humanise him more than I make that sound. His character benefits from such interactions, and his jovial attitude is entertaining. Sayako also exists, but does nothing too special compared to the show. Cornelia also appears here, and is good for the most part, both in battle and in her relations to the other characters. She isn't given much of a focus or anything, but it's tasteful for what we are given. Now for a rundown of the story, and it is quite an interesting one, fitting well as an extra chapter, as well as feeling cohesive to the rest of Code Geass. After the Zero Requiem, Zilkstan, a country with ties to the Geass Order, refuses to play ball with the newly established rip-off of the UN, and to complete their goals, kidnap Nunnally and Zero. A force go to retrieve them, but run into C2 and an egoless Lelouch. After the Requiem, Lelouch survived. Well, his body survived. His mind still stuck in the remnants of C's world. These joint forces break into the prison that Kurugi is being held in, both to save him and to connect to C's world, getting the old Lelouch back. After they escape the prison, they join with Cornelia and the remnants of the Black Knights. They recuperate and then go after the Zilkstan capital to rescue Nunnally. Cornelia, Cullen and Kurugi go after their armed forces, while C2 and Lelouch go toe-to-toe with Shamna and her interesting Geass. Eventually, they dip into C's world and beat the Zilkstan forces, retrieving Nunnally. That was a simpler rundown of the story, but what I really want to touch on is the ending. And I have to say I love it. Honestly, I think it's beautiful for these characters. Between C2 and Lelouch, there has at points been developments in their relationship that could point towards a romantic ending, much like him and Cullen. And that is a rather large aspect of this film, all coming to a head in this final scene, where C2 feels as if she is in the way of Lelouch's happy ending, and he rightfully states that everyone can survive without him, as they have for this long, leading to him changing his name to L2, and joining C2 in her travels, causing an amazingly animated reaction. Seriously, this shit gets tears out of me every time. Although that is only aspect 1 of 3 for this ending. Secondly is the credit art that is reminiscent of the original ending themes. We see our protagonists recuperate from the battle, Jeremiah and Anya tend to their orchard, Nunnally heading back to school, Zilkstan making peace with the UN, and Shirley finally getting a call from Lelouch. All looking good and being very meaningful. Finally is the end credit scene where L2 and C2, wearing drip, look over a pile of corpses as they offer the power of the king, Geass, to an unknown party, leading into the next show and rumoured 10-year plan that hasn't started yet in 2022, but I can't wait to see. A decent scene and a nice teaser. Now let's look at the animation of the anime itself. I find most of the animation good to look at. The 3D animation still feels a little off to me personally, but on a level of quality it's pretty good. I found a lot of shots such as the kaleidoscope and Charlio's death to be visually interesting, and well conceived on a practical and planning level. I also have to bring up the atmosphere. A lot of shots in this film do well to set an atmosphere and unique feelings, such as when Lelouch and C2 travel at the beginning, and the lighting and positioning of shots in Shamna's abode. I don't recall any animation errors either, so this film's animation is pretty good in my book. Now, talking about the music, first of all, the songs that take the place of an opening and ending, I won't rate, but I'll still mention here. First is Konosekai De by Leo Ereri, a name with far too many eyes. And it isn't really my jam. But by no means is a poorly made song. The lyrics are performed fantastically, and the instrumental fits perfectly with the tone of both the song and the visuals of where it's placed in the film. And taking place of the ending song is Revive by Uni 1, as I will guess it's pronounced. Unless it's actually pronounced Onion. This song fits the ending perfectly. The opening instrumental that accompanies C2's expression fits together heart-wrenchingly well, as does the rest of the song with the credits. The only problem I can see is some finding the recurring catchphrase of Revive a little annoying and repetitive. As with every anime review, we will decide on Best Boy and Best Girl. Firstly is Best Boy, and who else can we pick but Lelouch? He evolves, mostly out of his self-sacrificing tendencies, getting the happy ending without either getting himself killed or made enemy of the world. Now for Best Girl, it would probably go to C2. She was the more prevalent and plot active in the plot when it came to our main female characters, and the position just fits with her since we have Lelouch in the Best Boy spot. This film is one of the best sequel endings, or comfortable bookends, to the unsatisfying ending that we got in the original program. This film not only serves as this, but serves as an entertaining piece of media in its own right. It holds all positives of the show, and although repeating some, such as Nanali's character, fixes many flaws that I found unsavoury in the series. I am comfortable that the sheer quality and my immense enjoyment overshadow any negatives, and I am comfortable in giving the Code Geass movie, Code Geass Lelouch of the Resurrection, a perfect 10 out of 10. Which may not be an objective rating, but also isn't completely subjective, as I am resolute in thinking that this movie is of high standards when it comes to its sheer quality. And on the rewatchability scale, I'll put it at a keepsake. Not something I can put on repeat, but gives me a sense of enjoyment with every watch, and is certainly good enough to actively seek out again, whether at the end of rewatching Season 1 and 2, or just on its own. Thank you everybody for watching my review of Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. As I said before, this was a very old script, but I felt like I had to kind of get it out of the way before I move on to more things, or before I decide to come back and review the Akito films. Please like the video if you liked it, comment down below and tell me if there's anything you'd like me to review. Please subscribe, and if you do, ring the notification bell so you're told every single time that I make an upload. If you have any spare change, go check out my Ko-fi. And once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!
Toast. A little piece of toast. Because there's so much to choose from. There's brown bread, white bread, all sorts of wholemeal bread. It comes in funny packages with writing on the side.